So, we're back. Here, we're going to discuss the part 2 of employee benefits, which tackles competencies learning, or state the accounting procedures for defined benefit plans. Second is state the components of the defined benefit cost. And third is to describe the accounting for other long-term employee benefits and termination benefits.
Now, we will move on to the second part of the employee benefits. Accounting for defined benefit plan is complex. It requires actuarial assumption, which refers to as an estimate of an unknown value that is determined based on the method of actuarial science to measure the obligation on a discounted basis. Alam naman natin na sa defined benefit plan ay sa entity ay nagbibigay ng fund sa mga retired employees o sa mga employee na minamanage ng third party. Example ay bank, insurance company, or other agency na nakafix na. So kung kulang ang fund, sila palagi yung mag-a-adjust na pabor naman sa mga employee. Bakit? Kasi secured na yung nakukuha na benefits from them. Accounting for defined benefit plan has 3 steps. Step 1, determine the deficit or surplus. So dito, kung yung fair value of plan asset ay mas mababa kaysa sa present value of defined benefit obligation, meron itong deficit. Kapag naman mas mataas ang fair value of plan asset kaysa sa present value of defined benefit obligation, meron naman itong surplus. So, ano nga ba yung fair value of plan asset? Ito yung balance ng fund na nakaset aside by the company. Yung present value of defined benefit obligation naman ay ang obligation ng isang company na accumulated retirement benefits na na-earn. Step 2, determine the net defined liability or asset. Kapag ang nakuha mo sa first step ay deficit, ito ay net defined benefit liability. Kapag naman surplus ang nakuha mo, ito naman ay net defined benefit asset. Kaso hindi palaging surplus ang ilalagay. Kasi pwedeng surplus or asset ceiling, kung alin sa kanila ang mas mababa. Step 3, determine the defined benefit cost. Para makuha yung determine the defined benefit cost, kailangan muna natin kunin si service cost at net interest on the net defined benefit liability or asset na nare-recognize as net income or profit or loss. Yung remeasurements of the net defined benefit liability or asset naman ay nare-recognize as other comprehensive income. Now, let's proceed to the components of the defined benefit obligation. First is service cost. Under nito ay yung current service cost. Ito yung pagtaas ng present value ng defined benefit obligation during the current period. Second is yung past service cost. Ito yung changes ng present value ng defined benefit obligation from past period. It's either plan amendment or curtailment. Ang plan amendment, nagkakaroon ng pag-introduce or withdrawal ng benefit plan or even changes sa benefit payable na under ng defined benefit plan. Yung curtailment naman, yung pagliit na employees na covered ng isang benefit plan, kung saan bababa yung obligation mo at mababawasan din. Next is gain or loss on settlement. Nag-a-arise naman ito kapag ang obligation ng employer mag-provide ng benefits ay eliminated, meaning kapag nakapag-settle na si employer ng kanyang obligation, then it's either gain or loss will be recognized. Yung computation for gain or loss on settlement ay present value of defined benefit obligation minus settlement price. Next is net interest on the net defined benefit liability or asset. It refers to the changes in the net defined benefit liability or asset during the period that arises from the passage of time. It is computed by defined benefit obligation minus plan assets, while yung net defined obligation ay nagre-result as interest expense. Pero yung net defined asset naman ay interest revenue or income. For the last components of defined benefit obligation, which is the remeasurements, The actuarial gain or loss says it is the changes in present value of defined benefit obligation resulting from changes in actuarial assumption. Yung actuarial assumption, ito yung estimate ng variable na may malaking income sa pag-provide ng post-employment benefit. This includes demographic assumptions and financial assumptions. Demographic assumptions, it pertains to employee, kapag naman financial assumptions, it pertains naman to money matters. Second is return on plan assets. It represents the investment income earned by the plan assets during the year, after deducting the cost of managing the fund and taxes. So here's the illustration. Information Entity A's defined benefit plan is as follows. Present value of defined benefit obligation of January 1, 20x1 is 1,500,000. Fair value of plan asset January 1, 20x1 is 1,200,000. Present value of defined benefit obligation of December 31, 20x1 is 1,800,000. Fair value of plan asset December 31, 20x1 is 1,310,000. Current service cost is 325,000. Actuarial gain is 100,000. Return on plan assets 110,000. And discount rate 5%. Step 1. Determine the deficit or surplus. Fair value of plan asset December 31, 20x1 is 1,310,000 minus present value of defined benefit obligation of December 31, 20x1, 1,800,000 equals to negative 490,000, which is deficit. Step 2. Determine the net defined benefit liability or asset. Since deficit yung nakuha natin sa step 1, then 490,000 is net defined benefit liability. Step 3. Determine the defined benefit cost. First is the service cost. Under nito ay current service cost, past service cost, at gain or loss on settlement. So, dahil ang information above, ang given lang is yung current service cost, which is 325,000, yun lang ang total na makukuha sa service cost. Second is the net interest on the net defined benefit liability naman. Para makuha ang interest cost on the defined benefit obligation, ay imumultiply yung present value of defined benefit obligation ng January 1, 20x1 na 1,500,000 sa 5% discount rate, which is ang lalabas ay 75,000. Para naman sa interest income on plan assets, yung fair value of plan asset ng January 1 ay imumultiply sa discount interest rate na ang lalabas ay 60,000. Para makuha yung total ng net interest on the net defined benefit liability, ay pagmaminusin yung 75,000 at 60,000 na ang lalabas ay 15,000. Next is remeasurement naman. Ang actuarial gain or losses naman is 100,000. At yung difference between interest income on plan assets and return on plan assets is negative 50,000. Para makuha yung negative 50,000, yung nakuha nating interest income on plan asset kanina na 60,000 ay i-minus siya sa return on plan asset na given na 110,000. So, yung total remeasurement is negative 150,000. Para makuha yung total defined benefit cost ay i-add lang natin yung service cost na 325,000, net interest on the net defined benefit liability na 15,000, at yung remeasurements na negative 150,000, na ang sagot ay 190,000. Next is yung present value of defined benefit obligation using T account. So, paano nga ba kinocompute ito? Since ang normal balance ng present value of defined benefit obligation ay credit, yung beginning ay dapat nasa credit side. Yung benefit paid naman is debit side, dahil nagkaroon ng decrease sa obligation. Yung current and past service cost at interest cost naman ay nasa credit side dahil para silang nagko-cause ng increase sa obligation. Kapag naman actual gain due to decrease in present value of defined benefit obligation ay debit side. Kapag naman actual loss ay credit side. So here's the illustration for present value of defined benefit obligation using the T account. The following are the information in ABC company defined benefit plan is as follows. Present value of defined benefit obligation of January 1, 20x1, 120,000. Current service cost, 30,000. Discount rate, 10%. Benefit paid to retirees, 50,000. Decrease in present value of defined benefit obligation during the year due to change in actuarial assumptions is 10,000. Ito naman yung solution gamit ang T account. For fair value of plan asset using T account, so dito nakalagay sa debit side is beginning, return on plan asset at contribution to the fund, at sa credit side naman yung benefits paid. So here's the illustration for fair value of plan asset using T account. Fair value of assets January 1, 120,000, return on plan assets 12,000, contributions to the fund during the year 200,000, benefits paid to retirees 50,000. So yung hinahanap dito ay yung ending balance of the fair value of plan assets. Using the T account, let us compute the ending balance of fair value of plan assets. Beginning return on plan asset at contribution to the fund is on the debit side, which is 120,000, 12,000, and 200,000 respectively. While yung benefits paid is on the credit side, which is 50,000. Ipag-add natin yung 120,000 plus 12,000 plus 200,000 equals to 323,000. Then i-minus natin yung benefit paid na 50,000. Yung total ng ending balance of fair value of plan assets on December 31 is 282,000. Next is actual valuation method or projected unit credit method. Sees each period of service as giving rise to an additional unit benefit entitlement and measures each unit separately to build up the final obligation. Yung projected unit credit method is yung retirement benefit obligation, naka-measure siya based sa future salary levels of the employee. Next is attributing benefit to period of service. Benefits are attributed to the periods of service using the plan formula. So kapag ang benefits ay materially higher for services rendered in later years than previous years, the benefits are attributed on the straight line basis. Now, let's proceed to reimbursement. If it is virtually certain part of company nire-recognize as separate asset at min-measured naman siya as fair value. Next is overfunding or underfunding. Kapag net defined benefit asset ay overfunded. Kapag naman net defined benefit liability, it is underfunded. And fair value of plan asset equals to present value of defined benefit obligation, it is fully funded. Proceed naman tayo sa other long-term employee benefits. Offsetting. Magkakaroon lamang ng offsetting kapag present itong dalawa na to. First is legally enforceable rights, which is to use a surplus in one plan para masettle yung obligation under ng isa pang plan. Next is the intention, either settle the obligation on a net basis. For other long-term employee benefits, it should be settled beyond 12 months. Example are long-term compensated advances, jubilee or other long service benefits, long-term disability benefits, profit sharing, bonuses, and deferred compensation. Next is termination benefits. Ito ay pwedeng mahati sa dalawa. Ito ay yung entity's decision to terminate. Yung entity or employer mismo ang magde-decide na i-terminate o tanggalin ka sa trabaho. Next naman ay yung employee's decision to accept employer's offer. Ito ay decision mo na umalis o mag-resign sa trabaho dahil tinanggap mo yung offer ng entity or employer mo. Now let's proceed to recognition. Entity can no longer withdraw the offer of those benefits and restructuring costs under Pass 37, which involves payment of termination benefits. For the measurement, termination benefits are accounted for according to their nature. First is short-term benefits. Short-term benefits siya kapag payable within 12 months. Kapag payable beyond 12 months naman ay other long-term benefits. While enhancement post-employment benefits are accounted for as post-employment benefits. So here's the illustration. ABC Company plans to close a branch with 20 employees in 3 months' time. To fill in some pending customer orders, ABC Company offers its employees the following. Each employee who stays and renders service until the closure of the branch will receive 130,000 on the termination date. Employees who leave before the closure will receive 40,000. Half of the employees are expected to leave before closure. Requirement. How much is the liability for termination benefits? So here's the solution. The termination benefit is 40,000 per employee. This is the amount that ABC Company has to pay for terminating the employee regardless of whether he or she stays and renders service until closure or leaves before closure. The 90,000 excess is short-term benefit because this is paid in exchange for service rather than termination. The total termination benefits are computed as follows. Number of employees in the branch is 20 times termination benefit per employee 40,000 equals to 800,000 liability for termination benefits.
So that's the end of our discussion. I hope you learned a lot about our topic, which covers the employee benefits, the part 1 and the part 2. And thank you very much for watching and listening. God bless to all.